What's up, everybody? It's your buddy Brad. Oh, I've been looking forward to this episode, and I'll tell you why. I live in Colorado, where you may know is one of the states where cannabis is legal. And so it's in the news here in Colorado. It's a big deal. It's big money. It's interesting. It's bizarre to go to a party where, drugs were a bad thing to talk about, and suddenly it's legal. So a lot of things have changed. And you're probably like me in that you want to look behind the scenes. Well, lucky us. We're going to do just that. We're going to talk to this guy who has started his own cannabis country. Wow, it's more successful than I thought. Cannabis company. He's got several stores. He's got chemists. He's got growing factories. I don't think we call them factories. We're going to learn all about it starting right now. Please welcome to your world, Rich Kwessell. Rich, hello.
Hey, Brad. How you doing? Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Dude, all right, so I love this question. When you meet somebody at a cocktail party and you say, what do you do? And they say, well, I'm in sales. What do you do? How do you answer that?
Oh, probably avoid the question depending on who they are. So to be perfectly honest with you, it does bring up a ton of other questions as soon as you mentioned that you're in the cannabis business. I don't fret it if it's something to talk about and it's not a quick conversation. Then I'll let them know in the cannabis business, and usually that stems into a myriad of other questions. So,
well, all right. So I know in my job, if I tell them what my job is, I'm a motivational speaker. I know pretty much what questions they're going to ask first. When you say you're in cannabis, what are the questions that you get all the time?
Boy, probably, what part of the business are you in? Oftentimes, people are pretty surprised to. I'm on a podcast right now, buddy. Yeah, it's okay.
He's running a business right now, people.
We might get a couple folks. I'm in our war room right now. This is the main office of the greenhouse where I'm taking this podcast. But, very well, we might get questions about what side of the business are we in? Are we in the store side of it, the extraction side? That might be, if somebody asks that question, then I'll probably know that they're somewhat into cannabis, or at least a consumer themselves. Most people don't even know what that would be an applicable question. Or the growing side, a lot of people just assume that you're either on one or the other. In our business, we're vertically integrated, so we do all three pillars of it. And so it's a business just like any other, Brad. It's a widget that we make, and I always say it could be matchboxes or matchbox cars. It doesn't matter, and we just try to do it efficiently and the best of our ability, and watch the quality to the utmost ability to deliver the product. So.
Well, I am assuming, Rich, that when you were a little boy, you didn't think you would say, one day I want to grow up and say, yeah, we're vertically integrated.
Yeah, right. No, I didn't. I will tell you a funny anecdote, though. My brother and I did attend the University of Tel Aviv for a little while, and there we did grow a pot plant illegally. It was actually just 3 of them. We grew it on the roof of the dormitory. And then on the weekends, I was doing an overseas student program in a greenhouse. And that's where I was kind of getting my first initial introduction into greenhouses and growing things in greenhouse technology and plant movement and things of that nature. And I have my brother would come up and he'd work with me on the weekends up in the north of Israel, and we have a photo of us together transplanting junipers, small little junipers. And I vividly remember in that conversation, man, could you imagine if all this was weed? And sure as shit, how it is. So.
So, did I hear that right? You started like in botany, or like what?
It was a part of the students program. It was the overseas students program. I had basically a choice to go into because it was a work study program, and so for the working portion of it, I had 2 choices. One of them was a greenhouse and basically botany, greenhouse labor. And the other one was they called it a habonim factory, where they made things like fire hydrants and different types of big pipe fittings and cast iron fittings and whatnot. And so, at that time in my life, I was, looking at the 2 choices, and I just thought, shoot, I'll just go where, all all the members of, it was a much more co-ed environment over there opposed to a bunch of, greasy factory guys. So I just thought, well, I'll give that a try. And, I think my lucky stars, it was a great decision.
Let me see if I could recap. You picked working in the greenhouse because you thought there was a better chance of meeting girls, and that led you to the pot industry.
There weren't very many girls that were working in the Habonim factory, that's for sure.
All right.
So it was a college experience, right? So I wasn't there to try to learn how to build fire hydrants.
All right. So then when did you start? Oh, well, let's back up. It's 2022. When did pot become legal in Colorado?
So pot became legal in 2009 was when Eric Holder of the Obama administration signed what was called the Ogden Memo, which basically said that the federal government was going to leave states' rights up to the states and not interfere. So that was what was considered to be the start of the green rush. And that was when people started to actually dip their toe into the first realm of legitimate marijuana business. Although in the very beginning, it was very much still the Wild West, so because there was no frame of compliance that had yet to be built.
And were you, when did you get involved then? When were you starting?
So we got involved just shortly thereafter in 2009. My brother and I were never, outside of the 3 plants we grew in Israel, we were never pot growers. We never grew in our basement or anything like that, but when we had learned that there was a level of legitimacy around it, we thought, okay, this is something, let's take a look at it. And that was pretty much the beginning of it. We started growing in a buddy's closet in his house. And very shortly, just a couple months after that, we had, enough patients. Back then, you had to have patients to equal a plant count. So for every patient that signed their rights over to us, let me back up here. If you're a citizen in the state of Colorado at this time, then you have the right to grow 6 plants. Now, if you're not good at growing and you don't want to go through the trouble and maybe a $3,000 setup in your house to grow those 6 plants, then you can sign those rights over to somebody like me, and I'll grow them for you. And so as multiple people start signing over their rights to us, we start getting a larger plant count, which then means that we need to start getting a larger grow operation. And so that was basically the start of it. We've been through several different grows at this point to get to where we're at now, and the size and the scale that we're at now. And as far as compliance goes, no longer do you need to have patients for a plant count. That kind of went by the wayside, and the law has since changed. And so, quite a bit different for us these days.
So you literally said, all right, I'll grow 6 plants for you if you pay me. I'll grow 6 plants for you if you pay me. And
yeah, or it's not necessarily pay them. It's what at that time it was more, we'll grow the 6 plants, we'll sell them the weed back at a discount. And that would have been their incentive to sign the plants over to us.
Right. All right. So then at that point, you're growing only and giving them. Do you process weed or
you harvest it? You harvest it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we do processing, but back then it was just harvesting. There was no such thing as processing marijuana. But so we grow the weed, we harvest it. You got to dry it out, and then you cure it. And that's a process that usually takes about 3-4 weeks of slowly aging the cannabis in jars to kind of get the maximum amount of terpene content, or for your listeners, that's kind of the marijuana skunky smell that you would get off of a pot plant or in a whatever kind of strain you're looking to maximize. And then at that time, it would just go right from sale, direct to sale. There was no storefronts, there was no framework for a store. We would literally have a delivery service back then because that was legitimate at the time. If we got pulled over, we would have patient paperwork at the time, in our car, and it would have checked out. There was a darn good chance that there would have been an issue, just because the police officer wouldn't have known, the framework of compliance at that point in time.
Right.
So it would have been an education for them as well. But yeah, there was times where we would have to deliver marijuana in the strangest of places. I will tell you, you would be amazed at the types of people who you would never think are cannabis users, who are regular cannabis users.
Well, give us without giving us names, tell us a story.
Oh goodness. Officials, politicians, teachers, doctors, dentists, lawyers, librarians, folks at the Olympic Training Center. I mean, you name it. The list goes on. Yep.
Yeah, I would have been surprised. All right, so
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
how old are you? So you're driving around in a car with a
Yeah.
lot of legal
Yeah.
paperwork and a lot of pot,
At this
delivering it
time,
to.
27 years old at this time, and yep, harvesting it, building a small staff of people at that time. You know, this is a precarious thing to build employees around because there's so much stigma around it at this point as well. And then in addition to that, too, there was a lot of situations where competitors of ours were actually getting, robbed, or grows were getting broken into upon harvest. And so, in other words, they're, an inside job, somebody they helped trim it would tip them off, and there'd be a break in that night trying to nab that harvest, which was quite valuable at that time. And cops wouldn't really do too much about it because, again, they haven't yet necessarily jumped on the bandwagon.
Right.
Now that's totally different. Now the cops see this as a very viable source of tax income into the county, and they'd be damned if there was competition into that. You know what I'm saying? So
I remember those
now
early days of
Yeah,
hearing
was the
like
Wild West.
people would saw through a warehouse wall and
I'll
steal
tell you
plants.
this, Brad. Back in the day, and on our tours, we always one of our favorite stories to tell about our tours is that we have a plaque on the wall, and it's a couple of shells in a glass case, and all of it is ski goggles. There's maybe like a half a dozen pairs of ski goggles in there, and all the ski goggles have tape over the eyes of the ski goggles. And this is when Mike and I were first building our operation, and we hired people to come in to help us trim the weed. Again, there was a serious issue with grows getting robbed, and so I bought an RF scanner, something that would detect your cell phone signals or any type of a signal at that point. If you had a GPS, whatever, it would detect that. And we would have everybody meet us at a parking lot, usually at a Home Depot or a Target or something along those lines. And we would bring them into the grow, 4 at a time, in the back of our Isuzu Trooper. We only had an Isuzu Trooper. It was a 93 Isuzu Trooper we built the whole business with at that point in time. And we would bring them in, and they'd wear the ski goggles, and we would collect their phones and everything like that. And when they came into work, they'd be there at work for a minimum of an 8 hour, but it could be as long as 10 hours. But a minimum of 8 hours, and there's no reason to leave whatsoever. We have the whole thing is catered out. We have bathrooms. There's no reason that you would need to leave whatsoever. So there's no leaving during break or anything like that. There's no lunch break that you would just walk out. So you don't know where you're at the entire time that you're working for us. And then we would load you back up, take you back to your car, and give your phones back, and that would be the end of the shift. And we would we would harvest a room every 2 weeks. So we had the same crew getting together every 2 weeks for this. After the first couple of crops, we upgraded to a white van with no windows. And that was great because we could fit probably 10, 11 people in that van, and we didn't need the goggles anymore. But the goggles were a great touch, so we kept them and we framed them, and they get a lot of questions.
I'm just trying to picture me saying, "Yeah, Rich, I would like a job," and you say, "Well, you're gonna have to put on these ski goggles, and you can't leave the building." Are you okay? Are you okay with that?
There's some funny stories about individuals' first day who still work for me today, but individuals' first day where they come into work and they meet at this parking lot. They don't really know what to expect. A van pulls up and they start seeing people get inside the van. They're like, "I'm not getting in that van." And like another guy jumps in, like, "It's all right, dude. Just jump in, dude. Like, don't worry about it, man." Like, yeah, I felt the same way, 3 months ago when I started, but it's all good now, right? And yeah, we that's how we operated for the first couple of years, and then as soon as we could, we stopped that, and things started to get much more legitimate. We had cameras all over the place, that all kinds of security measures, and so we didn't need to do that anymore. But just funny.
Wait, oh dang it! We just blinked out. I lost your audio. Dang it! All right, hold on, everybody.
Back.
Oh, you just bounced back, and then I lost you again.
Yep.
There you are.
Oh, check 1, check 2.
You're back.
Check 1, check 2. Yeah.
I missed you.
Okay, cool. So I do have the echo back now. So what I'll do is I will go on mute here, or I guess I'll shut my speaker off.
Let's do this. Go ahead. go ahead. I'm going to kick you out and have you log back in. I'm going to talk to our listeners. Don't leave, everybody, because we're going to find out what happened to those goggles. All right, so we're on with Rich Kwessell. He's having some audio issues. The next question we're going to ask him is about money, because in the early days of Colorado cannabis, they weren't allowed to bank. So let's see if we can figure that one out.
Check one.
You're back.
All right, perfect.
All right, before I go on to banking, because that was a big thing that we read about here in Colorado.
Yeah.
If you offered me a job where I had to put on ski goggles and get in the back of a van, and you can't leave the building, Brad, you'd have to pay me a lot.
Yeah.
Is that right? Am I guessing right?
Yeah. I mean, it was good pay. We've always paid well. We've always had a higher than average pay, and it was the type of thing. It was take it or leave it. You know what I mean? And like our first trim that we did, I think we hired, if damn near all of them, probably 50 of them at one time. All CC students, Colorado College students. We had one of our buddies was a Colorado College lacrosse player at that time, definitely a socialite, and we asked him, hey, how many of you guys can get together? And his answer was, how many do you want? Like, these guys would love to do this. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, come in and trim weed for a night? Oh my God. Like, done. So then it became so it wasn't hard to find people. It really wasn't, and then it became the whole issue of we need to keep them serious. You know what I mean? These guys think that this is some kind of a, you come in, you're smoking doobers and hanging out the whole time. And it certainly isn't that. We have a astronomical amount of work to get done. Harvesting weed it's incredibly laborious. And so I remember the first crop that we did, at that point in time, the street price for an eighth of kind bud or good weed at that time was $50 even, and that was kind of a standard thing for pretty much as long as I can remember. Every now and then you'd find some guy be like 55, and you'd be kind of like, oh, what am I doing? Buying his lunch too, but whatever, he's the one asking, and I don't have any other places to shop here. So yeah, you give him what he asked for. And then we harvested our first crop, and I remember thinking, man, I'll never complain about the price of weed again. Like, it takes a lot. It takes a lot more than you think, Now it's a totally different thing. Now it's all mechanical and machine driven and things of that nature. So, but back then it was all by hand. None of that existed.
So the college kids left with money. Did they leave with money and weed?
No, we didn't pay anybody in kind. I think our attorneys at that point were telling us not to do that, even though it wasn't fully, it wasn't basically, it was still gray area. We were advised not to do that. So we would pay in cash. And then we would have a sign out sheet too for the cash that was delivered. So we would sign it, they would sign it, we would keep the sheet. If they wanted a copy, they could keep it too. But that was so that nobody could ever come back to us and say, hey, yeah, you paid me $3 less than you should have every single check for the last 2 years. It's built up to this amount, and now I'm coming after you. We've always been very careful about labor laws, things of that nature. So, so that's how that went down.
I'm so eager to ask you about money.
Yeah.
So the way I understand it, Rich, is it became legal in Colorado, but illegal federally. And the banks just didn't want any piece of you. So then you guys were a cash business, and that gave all of you a massive problem that you had a lot of cash.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So we would, so before cannabis, my brother did work a small stint in the banking world. He was a manager for a TCF bank. And one of the things that he had to abide by was always basically like a two-person protocol. So every day one person would get a 4-digit code, another person would get a 4-digit code, and how the safe would be opened is with an 8-digit code, and then the next day it'd be 2 randomly generated new codes type of a system, So we didn't do that exact system, but we did systems like that to where we would have a network of couriers, and basically, I mean, it sounds pretty rugged, but coffee cans buried in the desert, not exactly, but to that nature, and so there would be a lot of our team would be trusted with money, trusted with couriering money. There would be things like unmarked cars with follow vehicles, things of that nature. Never had a problem at all. Never had theft internally. Never had an attempt externally. But we were extremely careful about it, and we didn't.
Go back to the details. You said coffee cans in the desert.
No, not exactly. But we had. But the cash couldn't be put into a bank, And so, you know, for what you didn't pay out into the business for CapEx expense or for general operating expense or for payroll, had to go somewhere. And it couldn't stay at my house. It couldn't stay at Mike's house. So
So it was hidden somewhere.
it's hidden. It had to be hidden, or it had to be spent into the grow. Now, because we never really had too much of an issue with stockpiling money because we expanded so quick. So we were always trying to fight for more money for the next spend, which we already had earmarked and knew what we were going to do. So
that means you buy a new building, you're walking up at the closing with a bag full of cash, like in the movies.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, there's a lot of stories about us purchasing things with bags full of cash that people are just like they shake their head and they're like, "Holy goodness," like, or major utilities that are being put into new facilities that we're doing. I'm talking about, major utilities. Like we had I-25 shut down to run electrical and gas underneath the highway. For a cannabis grow at that time, that was major red tape for cannabis grow to have that done. That got paid in cash.
Did any of your vendors balk at that? Like, I don't want this much cash.
No, they knew that would be coming to them that way. And so, yeah, actually they wouldn't balk at it because that was kind of a prerequisite to getting the deal. But what they would do, we'd have people turn us away, or there would be a lot of vendors who just wouldn't want to deal with cannabis companies in the beginning. That was a big problem in the greenhouse world as well, where different types of greenhouse technology or different types of greenhouse automation would be off limits to us simply because the stigma of cannabis. So like there's a couple of large greenhouse technology trade shows that happen across the country that I frequent and just to keep an eye on it. And for the longest time, for the first couple of years we were in business, the only way that we were able to purchase anything is just by letting people assume that we grow strawberries. And I wouldn't correct them. The name of our business being Strawberry Fields, I would just say, yeah, we need those conveyor belts. Are you going to do business or not? If they ask questions, I wouldn't lie to them. I'd be honest with them. And sometimes that would thwart the sale, so I'd have to go elsewhere. Now that's not the case at all. Now the greenhouse trade show has, it's riddled with cannabis marketing everywhere.
I'm just trying to picture you
it just
saying,
goes to show you,
I want to buy your stuff. I've got a bag full of money.
Yeah.
And you're going to say no.
Yeah. I know it.
All right. So, can you tell us a story about buying stuff with cash? Like, did you buy a new house with cash? And
No. Homes are quite complicated for owners of cannabis businesses, just because it's very difficult for us to, because of the banking issue, for us to qualify for banking loans or anything of that nature. So, where I live and everything like that has been stagnant since I've been in the business. So, a bridge to cross, hopefully once things change nationally.
But I'm assuming if you've got cash hidden in the desert, you don't need a loan.
You still would. Yeah, it's not that much cash. If I don't want to give your viewers the impression that there's mattresses full of money that we sleep on. That certainly isn't the case. We've certainly created mattresses full of money for the IRS. That's for sure. I don't know if you want to get into the weeds on that, but damn near 70% of every dollar that we make goes to the IRS. In some senses, it could be worse. Yeah. Ooh. So this business it's interesting. It's fun. I'm deep into it now, deep enough to where you can't just pick up and turn around anymore. We're into it. But hindsight 2020, I wouldn't have gotten into the cannabis business.
Whoa.
My brother and I would have been great entrepreneurs in any business. We would have done, we came from the service side of things, fine dining kitchens, front of the house and back of the house. We could have done a lot of different things. We wouldn't have done this. Think of a world where you can't claim your cost of goods. Think of a world where the IRS looks at you. You have to pay out, to me, I think it's as many as 78 employees that I pay, and then the IRS considers that I didn't pay them anything. I still have the money, and they tax me as such.
What?
Yeah.
Wait. So you can't claim payroll as a deduction?
Not everybody's payroll. I can claim payroll on the folks who are actually creating the product. Anything that has to do with selling it, you cannot.
So somebody, I walk into one of your stores, there's a guy standing there.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, I don't pay. Yeah, IRS says you never paid him. You have the money. Tax him as such. Isn't that wild?
But what
And
is their
we're lucky that
reasoning?
because the sale of cannabis is still federally legal.
Uh,
And there's a special tax code regulation called 280E that we have to abide by. That is really the kind of the Bible for how all cannabis companies have to submit their taxes, and it is incredibly punitive to the point where it just almost makes it, there will be years where we will see less of a revenue than the taxes that we owe. In other words, you're on a hamster wheel running as fast as you can, and the wheel just keeps getting bigger, right? So,
okay, that is not my fantasy world
oh
of
no,
how the pot world
it's a
works.
terrible fantasy. Yeah, people hear that and they're like, oh my god, like wow. People think it's totally different. People think, boy, cannabis, that's the hot business that you want to be in right now. I wouldn't say so. I would say the hot business to be in right now would be food.
All right, well, before we close this out and go on to something else, can you summarize why
Yeah.
you're sorry you went into the pot industry? You mentioned the
I'm not
taxes.
sorry about it. No, I do love it. I love the plant. I love what it does for folks. I'm a firm believer cannabis is has a benefit to our entire body endocrine system and makeup, and a lot of people see a tremendous amount of benefit from cannabis. Run a business and you'll see firsthand exactly how much. I mean, it's wild the stories that pour into our stores every day on what it does for folks' life. So I don't want to sound like I'm um, not grateful to be in the business. It's just hindsight 2020. You don't get into business for those reasons. You get into business to make money. And so, I could have done a lot of this stuff on the side, had a great time with it, all that kind of stuff, yet still run a lumber yard or whatever the case is,
Right.
to where now running a business, as the government sees, is in fact, a 100% true legitimate business, and I can claim my taxes as such. It's an incredible luxury. And the day that happens in cannabis and we're allowed to do that, it'll be a huge shift for us. It will just be a tremendous shift. Yep.
Well, you brought it up, Rich. So we're going back in time. You said you should hear some of the stories that we hear in our stores about the.
Yeah, real quick. 1 second. Sorry, Brad. Just making sure. If you guys don't need me, I'm on a giving a podcast. Look, yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Right. If you can't see us, Rich is turning to his staff saying, "Leave me alone."
Thank you, man. Appreciate your help today. Yep. See you tomorrow.
So what I was asking is, what are the stories that people come in and say, "Oh, Rich, this has been such a life changer." What are you talking about?
Yeah. Things. I mean, mostly it's health issues. Things like, for instance, the seizures is a huge one that we see a tremendous amount of help with. Anxiety, pain, inflammation. Honestly, the list goes on. So people use cannabis for all kinds of beneficial reasons, and it's here to stay. I think
Right.
it's here to stay, and now it's not just here to stay, and it's above ground. It's a source of tax revenue for the communities in which it serves. It's when you go into my stores, that you're getting a tested, legitimate product that has been third-party tested. We're not doing our own testing. Those third parties are state-certified laboratories that they have to go through just tremendous rigor to keep their licenses intact. And so there's a lot of certainties around it. No longer are you drinking bathtub gin and you need to worry about your eyesight. So
Yeah. Well, when you and I were young, there was Fast Times at Ridgemont High, the movie, and Spicoli comes out of the van and pot smoke billows out, and he's a complete loser. Are those people showing up at your store too?
no, I think that stigma's over. I don't see too many of them. I guess, yeah. I won't say that we don't see some of that. Some group of bros going snowboarding or something like that coming to hit our store, but I think most of that stigma's kind of gone to the wayside. Yeah, yeah. The idea of a pothead being a drag of society, who's an unproductive person who can't function because of the cannabis that they're smoking, I think is gone to the wayside.
Right.
So I mean, I think that it's obvious that everybody knows, or if they don't, they're living in the dinosaur times, that people of great achievement, from Elon Musk to Michael Phelps, are potheads.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, personally, it's been weird because I grew up. I think you and I are. I'm 56. How old are you?
40.
Oh, you're a youngin. Well, okay. When I grew up, it was Nancy Reagan. Say no to drugs.
Yeah.
And we were hammered on that. So it's very weird to be in that generation. And then I go to a church, and for me, the best part of this church is all of my friends from there are older than I am. They're maybe not my parents' age, but they're quite a bit older. And I love that. And it's weird to be at a church party with these people, these grandparents, and they're talking about pot and sharing stories about pot. And what do you think? And have you tried this? And then my little head explodes.
Yeah. Oh, our average age, especially in some of our stores, because depending on the demographic, in downtown Denver we have a store that's a little younger, a little more hip. But then again, the demographic around it's younger, more single professionals. You go down to Central Pueblo, our average age is probably older than you that comes into that store.
That old.
Yeah. No, I mean it's true though, because the stigma's away, or maybe they're not consuming cannabis by inhaling it or eating edibles, for the buzz factor. Maybe they're using a topical cream for inflammation or for fibromyalgia.
Right.
Very common. Yeah. Right. And a THC CBD mix does the wonders for them, whereas a CBD only, which you could purchase online, might not do the trick fully. So it just depends.
Yeah, for me, the change has been fascinating. Just because it doesn't feel like it's been that long. I honestly, it hasn't been 13 years, right?
Yeah, 13 years. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So
let me see. 2009 was it was about 2010 when badges came out. That's this right here. And then they started to get a much more legitimate framework for what it meant to be a license holder, opposed to a caregiver. A caregiver would be somebody who grew plants, like I explained in the beginning of the conversation, grows plants, 6 of them for another individual, and then you can rack up individuals. You get 100 individuals under you, you have a 600 plant count, which was different than from being a license holder, and so that those types of things changed. And then recreational weed came on, and that changed again everything. And so the chessboard has been changing, every couple of years, somewhat in the rulemaking, which has been fun. It's been, we like to say, it's been like building a plane and flying it at the same time. So because some of these things that we plan for process wise might take, a couple pieces of equipment that could be as minimum of 20 grand to a maximum of 200 grand per piece. If we're building out a production line and then something changes in the laws and it might render 2 or 3 of those pieces of equipment useless, it's a nightmare. So there's not a cannabis company that I know that doesn't have a boneyard full of items that they're like, yeah, it's useless now.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Back to it becoming more acceptable. I was at a professional conference 8 or 9 months ago, and having lunch. Professional conferences are at that round table and it's lunch, and you've helped yourself to the buffet. And so I'm sitting with people I've never met before, having a lovely conversation, and this woman brings out a bag of edibles, just like someone might bring out a bag of or a box of Altoids after lunch and say, who wants one? Honestly, I felt so freaking old, but I'm like,
well,
yeah, why? Yeah, what? It's very hard for me.
Yeah, I can understand that. That's pretty forward right there. If it was in Colorado, technically it is legal. You can gift away up to an ounce of cannabis without any remuneration of any kind. But if it's outside of Colorado, straight up, she's
breaking the law.
Dispersing. Yeah, probably breaking the law. But hey, I hear you though. As far as the nonchalance of it, it's pretty cavalier these days. People get it. I'm sure you've walked out of a bar in Denver or a restaurant and smelled someone smoking a joint right outside, or maybe hitting a vape pen or something. It's not at this point, it's like, whatever.
Yeah, it's hard to be in downtown Denver without smelling it all over the place.
Exactly right. Yeah. Well, and also too, let's face it, that there is a catch-22 in the industry where you do purchase it, but then you can't use it or consume it anywhere. They did just fix that with consumption lounges, of which I think one is open and the other one is trying to get open. There's not,
Well, let's
That's not,
let's catch people up. As I understand this, Rich, and cover me on this. I think this means if you're a tourist and you come to downtown Denver, you can buy pot, but you can't smoke it in your hotel room, of course, and you can't smoke it on the street, and you can't smoke it in a restaurant, which means you can't smoke it.
right. Yeah, you're not supposed to be able to smoke it in your hotel room. I understand there are some friendly hotels. I don't know if there's any in Denver proper. I don't think so in Denver proper. There are a couple as you get out to more of like the smaller Colorado towns, Buena Vista, things of that nature, Dillon. I think that there's a couple of motel type of places where you can, but you're right, you can't. You got to sneak around. You know what I mean? You got to go hide somewhere and smoke a joint in the bushes.
Right. Which is why downtown smells like pot all the time.
That's part of the reason why. Yeah.
All right, so tell us about your company now. You started with 3 plants.
Yeah. So
You've got several stores. You've got a grow
we do.
operation. You're chemists. What do you do?
Yeah. So we have currently we have 5 stores in Colorado. We have one in Trinidad. We have one in Central Pueblo. One in North Pueblo. We have a store on the I-70 corridor in what's called Downeyville, but a lot of people know that as Idaho Springs. And then we have a 5th store that's in downtown Denver, just off Yosemite Hampton. And then to supply those stores, we have a 2-acre greenhouse that's got a full automation stack there, and a pretty state-of-the-art, pretty awesome greenhouse. And then that's connected to a processing facility where we harvest. We make our own soil there. We handle as much of the process as we possibly can there in-house. And then, in addition to harvesting and drying, curing, all that kind of stuff, we also have a kitchen lab there where we'll make our own edibles. We make several different lines of products and consumer goods. We do, let me see here, we do a gummy, we do a vape pen, we do a Rice Krispie, like the old nostalgic Rice Krispie treats. We do probably forgetting a couple of them here. We do chocolates. We do several different flavors of chocolates. Each one of these SKUs probably has 6 to 10 flavors to it also. So it can be pretty complicated back there at any time, depending on what they're making. The configuration of the room changes all the time. And yeah, that's pretty much a wrap. We also have an operation. We're a small part of an operation. I shouldn't say we have. We're a small part of an operation, but we handle all the management for that operation for a group in St. Louis that has basically an identical structure to the one we have, along with 3 stores, and a kitchen is being built there where they'll make similar products to the ones that we make, almost identical, different branding, but very similar. And then there's another store that we're a part of in Maryland, as well as another operation. It was 5 stores in Ohio that we were a part of. 4 of them got sold, and one of them is still operating in Columbus. And I don't know if that one will be sold or not. We don't have much of a say in those types of other operations because of residency laws with the states. These other states, they require for residents of those states for a certain amount of time to be the license holder. Generally speaking, somebody in another state that is getting into cannabis will say, okay, we want to get into this. This seems like a hot new business to be in, as everybody, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are considering, and they won't know where to go. They won't know where to start. And so they can start, from scratch and learn all these lessons the hard way, but they'll never be competitive in their state because other folks who are well-funded in their state are going to go find teams like us who have been doing this for 12, 13 plus years. We have our systems dialed in. We know our vendor stack. We know what types of equipment we're going to use. There's no questions anymore. So there's no, we don't need to waste money trying to figure things out. We got that done. And so they'll generally come to us. And that's how we found, these other partnerships and whatnot. And, there's always a couple that are in the works, and some fall through, and, some come to fruition and start actually selling cannabis. So it's pretty cool to see.
You're a pot magnet.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't think so. There are some pot magnets out there. I wouldn't consider myself to be one of them, but have, show, will travel. I'm
so impressed with how many portions of the, starting with a marijuana plant all the way to selling it, how many parts there are, and you've become involved in all of them. Tell me about packaging, because if you wrap up a Rice Krispie treat, that's got to have a lot of rules. And or how do you do? You do the packaging also?
Yeah, I'll get into some weeds here, Brad. You just interrupt me when you want, okay? Because this is the in the weeds, no pun intended. Is that so? Child-proof packaging is a big deal here in Colorado, right? And there's all kinds of rules around packaging. I mean, I've come out with award-winning packaging brands that won awards and other types of we won one with an Addy Award, and then had it on the market for a while, and ultimately had to pull it because it was too close to a cartoon character. Which it was. Talk about maddening. We even checked with, we have some friends of ours that are also med investigators. That's Marijuana Enforcement Division investigators that, we have their cell phone. They call when we answer, or, they answer when we call, and we're on a friendly basis. So we kind of check this by some of these guys, get your unofficial off the record opinion. Are we too close to a cartoon? No, not at all. Of course. Well, we had to pull that. That was pretty sad. That was all around, the packaging. Packaging has to be, like I said, child-proof. That's a whole level of compliancy there. There's a certain amount of value add that brings to the package. So, no longer, you might look at an uptick of 15% into your packaging where you might not have to if you were not in cannabis, right? Here's where it kind of gets tricky too, is that all of our edibles have to be no more than 100 milligrams of THC per package. And so that means that, and in addition, they have to be broken into 10 pieces, and each piece can only have 10 milligrams in it. And so that means that now we get a raw material that comes in that's generally known as distillate. That is THC that has been refined through an extraction process into a crude oil, and then through a short path distillation, which is a process that you've probably done in college chemistry class, very much like when you separate alcohol and water through a boiling point. Right?
I think that's adorable. You think I did anything with chemistry in college, but thank you for that compliment.
Well, we will separate out and distill away the THC from all the other plant particles and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, we will mix that into our edibles. However, that comes to us in different strengths. And so through a mathematical formula, we need to basically dial that down into how much of this would we need for that batch of Rice Krispie treats, so that on the end product, when we cut it exactly 1 inch by 1 inch squares, each square is 10 milligrams. And then it goes out for testing, and we have a variance of, I think it's 15% on each side. So it's 1.5 milligrams on each side, whether too much or too little. And if it doesn't pass, it can't get sold. And so you talk about a lot of investment that the company puts into growing the marijuana for 6 months until it's harvested, and then getting extracted. And there's several steps in that process, and payroll in that process. And then it gets mixed and made into an edible. There's several steps in labor in that process, as well as a lot of hard costs as well, So, and then after that, it goes off for testing. Again, more expense for testing. That's not free either, only to fail. So at that point, that's the most detrimental of the company, because the company's bled out each step to get it to that point, only to see it fail, and then no recoup back on anything, and it has to get trashed.
And fail means you put 101 milligrams in a 100.
Yeah, there's either too much or too little THC in it, or it could be a number of other reasons. It also could fail for a microbial test. It could, it could see some kind of a negative, like a bacteria, aspergillus, mold, something like that. That could be on it. So it's tested on various agents, is what they call them. But for the most part, companies generally fail for strength. And so you got to be careful about that stuff. And so every edible that you eat, and you see that in Colorado, and you wonder, gosh, they're all 10 and there's 100 for everyone. That's the law. You have to have that. And there's, those folks have solved a lot of problems to get it up to the shelf.
Right.
At 10, I got a lot of respect for anybody who's still in the business and still doing it, because I know what they're going through, and I know that I know that the world likes to think that everybody in cannabis is making tons of money, and they certainly charge the cannabis industry as such. You being in the events world, the stigma behind weddings in the wedding industry, and a lot of venues, you might say, hey, I'm interested in that space for a corporate event, and as soon as you drop the wedding word, a new price comes out.
Right.
You know what I mean, right? So I'm very thankful in that we've avoided as much of that as we possibly can, and we have some great vendors who don't gouge us just because we're cannabis, but that was very much the case for a while.
It must be after being in this as long as you have, as you look back and then you realize, wow, I'm an expert in this, and I had no idea. I had an expert in that. I didn't even know that exists. I know about packaging and that bacteria and what all. You, your entire business is filled with things that you didn't know existed when you
I
started.
never would have thought I would have learned any of this, Brad. I mean, tiny things, electrical conductivity of water, molecular breakup of water and how that affects plants. Plants' autoimmune receptor systems to increase THC content. It's just, it goes on and on and on. It never ends. And no, just when you think you're good at something, there's another set of expertise that you're saying, man, we better get on that, because if we don't, the boat's leaving behind, and the teams that do get on that are going to be the ones still around, right?
Am I
So
detecting a little burnout?
no. But it's I definitely enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the nonstop problem solving of it. I think we thrive there as a team. We're a very agile team. We're very we can move quick on our feet. A lot of our competitors that are of our size are publicly traded companies that don't have that ability. They have to answer to boards and wait for decisions and things like that to come down. They certainly have, in our world of competition now, endless pocketbooks of publicly traded money that we don't have. So a lot of the decisions that I make have to have extra scrutiny to go into them. If we purchase a $500,000 piece of equipment to automate joint rolling, well, we had better damn well know that that's going to be, there's a market for it, that makes sense, that we know our numbers down, to the gnat's ass, so that we don't make a mistake, right? That's a hell of a piece to throw in your boneyard to collect dust. You know what I mean? So,
Did you just say you bought a machine for $500,000 that rolls joints?
yeah, it looks like it's out of a Pfizer factory. It looks literally, it would be, it wouldn't be out of place in the most sophisticated pharmaceutical laboratories in the world. And it does it all. It weighs them. It does. I mean, it'll make julienne fries for you while you wait, fried to a perfect golden brown. It does. I mean, it's a pretty amazing machine. Yeah, it is.
And is that the kind of thing where you can share that with other companies, or it doesn't work that way?
No, yeah, we can. Shameless plug, open to toll your joints if you want. What that means is because there's a good chance now that we can produce them cheaper than you can. And so if you're interested, we would love to produce your line too, white label your product. We have no pride in that. We'll produce several different of our competitors' lines as well. Don't care. We'll do it to the same quality controls that we produce ours. Happy to do it. And so. Yeah.
All right. Anybody out there with a pot company? Now you know where to get your joints rolled.
It's funny because it's in the world of cannabis now. I think there is a middle machine now, but in the world of cannabis, automated joint rolling came out with. It's been pretty archaic for a long time, and just recently, not just I'd say probably maybe about 6 years ago, came out what was called a future roller machine, which is kind of a neat machine. It does 100 at a time, right? And that was a big deal. Very consistent, and one person, could, if they're good, hit 3,000-4,000 a day, and they have them all done. That'd be a great goal to have. And then, that machine, I think, was, if I'm not mistaken, it was like $3,500. Maybe it might have been $7,000. So to have the next up machine be over $440,000 baseline machine, each attachment is like $60,000 for the attachments that you need, and you can't use it without several attachments on there. My brother and I are just sitting there being like, isn't there a middle of the road machine that we can get first? Like, dip our toe into it? Nope. And we knew very well that if we're not an early adopter of this technology, those that are going to crush this market out.
Well, help me with the numbers. I think you said the earlier machine, you might be able to make 3,500 joints.
Oh yeah, this one.
What about the new one?
Couple, 1,000 an hour, couple an hour. I mean, it kicks you out. Yeah.
So among other things, my head is blown because you're selling 1,000 joints an hour?
No. It doesn't need to run 24/7. It doesn't need to run 24/7, but it makes sense for us at the rate that we're selling joints now to eat into the labor costs for us to want to use it.
Right. That's why you have enough extra time to make your competitors' joints.
That's why I have enough to make my competitors' joints too. And they can keep stacking it on, and I'll run the thing 24/7. We'll take a half a day shift off a week for maintenance and keep it going. So no shame here.
Yeah, that sounds like just smart.
Yeah. You can run.
When you and your brother said, when you were 27, you got a big brother or a younger brother?
Older.
So me and my big brother, mom and dad, we're doing pot. How'd
Yeah.
that go?
Funny story. Funny story. Well, we never did. We never told him. We kept, yeah. My mom's pretty not in her politics, but around, at least with cannabis, she's pretty conservative. Jewish mom, pretty strict. She took no shit. That's for sure. And there was a lot of stigma around it. So we started getting into getting into caregiving and actually growing plants. We never grew illegally. It was always legitimate because we knew that if we ever had a knock on the door or on the grow room or something like that, we need to be able to show this paperwork, and we were very, very cautious about that. But the mom was a tough thing, and so we just kind of put it off, didn't get to it, you know what I mean? And then like time went on, and like we expanded a little bit, and then we still didn't get to it, and then like we expanded a little bit more, and we still didn't get to it. And now like, when you have like that pebble in your shoe that's like so big, and like if you have to tell like, oh God, it's just like it's a bigger issue now. And then God's honest truth, we actually had so there. So you have in Denver, you have the Westward. Well, in Colorado Springs, it's the Independent, right? That's our counterculture newspaper here is the Independent, right? It's where you see all the punk rock shows and everything like that. And they do the best of Colorado Springs. The best wedding venue, the best DJ, the best bartender, the best barber, you name it, right? And we won the best cannabis shop. And then later, and we were like, shoot, we really got to tell our folks now, like, this is a problem. And it wasn't like, before we could blink, we were in California and we won a People's Choice Award for Colorado amongst all stores in Colorado. We beat out some pretty prestigious stores at that time in Denver, some good friends of ours, The Clinic, who was lifelong friends of ours to this day based on that encounter where they took second place. Good guys. I love them to death, but truth is the truth. Either way, so at that point, we got back from California. We were like, look, we got to tell our folks. So we basically just loaded up our parents into the car, and at that time, we owned 5 different growing rooms, grow facilities. All of them were indoor at that time because you couldn't have an outdoor greenhouse. Grow was against the law for various reasons I can get into, but they were all hidden. They're all, I'd say the smallest one was probably about 2,000 square feet. The biggest one was maybe about 4,500 square feet.
Yeah.
5 of them running on rotation, and we basically gave them the full tour through all of them. And my folks were, they were surprised. They were pretty aghast. I think my mom was more just happy to know that there was a reason why there was so much absence with her sons, because we were pouring our time into this business now. I mean, it just takes so much to do it. And so I'm sure that at that point she had noticed that maybe we were a little bit more unavailable for, hey, we're getting together for Sunday Broncos or whatever the case is, can't mom, for whatever reason. And then,
right.
So I think she had told us she was more relieved to know that, that there was a reason, albeit I would say a legitimate reason, even though this wasn't legitimate at the time,
right?
Federally legitimate, but yeah. So,
and is your dad in the picture?
Yeah, our dad is. He's not in the picture at all with the business. Our folks are not. They don't have anything to do with the business.
But he's still with your mom.
Our dad is never. Say again.
Is he still with your mom?
Yep. Still married.
So what'd your dad say when you after this big tour?
Well, yeah, he was just like, okay, like, be careful, guys. I'm assuming you guys know what you're doing, and that you told him, yeah, we have a couple of attorneys that keep an eye on us, for every move that we make, and we don't do anything without checking with them and making sure that everything is by the book. And part of the tour was explaining to them, here's a patient paperwork contract. This allows us to grow 6 plants. Here's the packet of all of them. If we get raided by the police or the feds, this is the first thing that we show them. This checks out with each of these individuals. So just basically let them know all that stuff. And I think ultimately they were it's funny though, you said earlier about older folks not wanting to admit maybe that cannabis has helped them out or whatever the case is that about maybe the 3rd facility that we walk into, and after the ether's worn off of our parents, and we don't need to explain the paperwork thing for the third time. Now they get it, you know what I mean? And out comes the stories of, oh, Lisa and Susie, boy, I think they're going to like this, you know what I mean? Right. Hinting like, yeah, so it's funny. People would never thought, these are old elders in my parents' synagogue, saying, really, wow. Okay. Well, yeah, let them know. If they need anything, I'm around.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So,
And
yeah, right. Yeah.
What was the time lag between when you opened and when you told them?
Oh, gosh. Longer than I want to admit.
Years?
No, almost a year, maybe. We had a pretty big expand. We expanded pretty big in that first year because we just put all the chips back towards the table. Any money that we would make, it would go into what's the next plan, what's the next room. We need to get on this. And I think when we had our fifth room built, we were at that point. You could say you always kind of talked about growers by the amount of lights that they had. Each light was 1,000 watts, and that allows you to produce a certain amount of cannabis, right? So that's like your horsepower in your engine. And so at that point in time, we didn't know of a larger grower who had more lights hanging than us south of, Colorado Springs and parts south. And we wanted to maintain that. You know what I mean? We wanted to be aggressive about that growth. And so then after that, we consolidated. Those rooms got too small for us very quickly, right? We were chewing through them. We needed to expand. So we consolidated. We kept one room and kept it as like a genetics bank to keep all of our cannabis is grown to death, and then you harvest the plant to death. It's not like a lemon tree or an apple tree to where you harvest the fruit off of it and the plant keeps growing for another season, right?
Oh.
And so when we harvest it to death, you need to repopulate your plant count with another live plant, and that plant has to match the same genetic code of the plant that you just harvested, because if we have somebody who finds a great amount of relief with a certain strain of ours, we want to keep that consistency coming every time they come in there, so they know that they can expect that same strain, that same strength, that same health, all that stuff every time. And in order to do that, you need to keep a mom plant, or in our case, several different mom plants, and you cut clones off of that mom plant and plant your clones. So it's a perfect genetic copy. And then you allow that plant to regain its foliage, and then that allows you to cut clones down again. One mom might give you 100 clones each time you go to chop it, and then it might take, a couple weeks to grow back another 100 clones, give or take the speed of the grow. And so that's generally the way that it works with cannabis. And so we kept one room just for the mom plants, kind of keep those separate and protected. And then we moved into a large 30,000 square foot indoor. And that at the time, that was a big bite off. That was a huge bite. We could only fill half of it at a time. We didn't know anybody else that was going that big. We knew outside of Denver, there was a couple handful of teams up in Denver that were going that big, or some of them bigger. And so we knew if we're going to remain relevant, we need to do this and throw all chips forward. And we did that. That was, at the time that we did that, it was like, oh my God, are we making a mistake? This is the biggest building I've ever seen, type of thing. Like, right. Oh my God, right? What are we doing? And we did it. We made it work. And just not even a couple short years later, it was too small. And we're saying, oh my God, we're busting out of the seams of this place. We cannot stay here. Now we're looking for 75,000 square feet or above. And we looked everywhere from Denver down to Trinidad, every warehouse that stood, because we didn't want to rebuild a warehouse. We were specifically looking for places like grocery stores or things that had a lot of power already coming into them, so we didn't need to bring the infrastructure back in with the power. That's very expensive to bring that kind of power in. And ultimately, during that search, that was when the state had kind of changed laws around greenhouses and outdoor grows, recognizing the legitimacy of these things much more.
Right.
So as soon as they recognized greenhouses, we knew, click from my time in Israel, that's the way that this is going to work. That's the way that the world's non-outdoor farmable crops are grown. They're not grown inside; they're grown in greenhouses always, right? So if it can't be farmed directly outdoors because of the rigors of the outside climates, such as cabbage or peppers, those can be grown outdoors. Peppers maybe not a good example, but they do. Chilies all the time here in Pueblo are grown outdoors, whereas cucumbers are not. You know what I mean, right? Heirloom tomatoes are not. They're grown in greenhouses, much like I was doing in Israel. So I said, wow, this could really be a great benefit for us. Greenhouses are much cheaper to operate simply because of the power bill. We're not manufacturing the sun inside through these super expensive light bulbs, 1,000-watt light bulbs. So that just made sense, and that was the direction that we went and never looked back. And so we started looking for open farmland where we could erect a greenhouse at that point in time. The biggest thing at that point in time, Brad, was it was all about the water rights. So yeah, here getting into an area where I never thought that I would learn anything about.
Yeah.
You asked me, water law. I'm not an expert in water law, but I'm a couple shades shy of it. I certainly had to learn water law through the crucible of getting beat up in water law and learning fast with a lot of mentors, right? So we were looking for farmland that had no attachment to any federal aquifer, any federally held pipeline system, ditch system, irrigation system, any surface water rights most likely wouldn't work. So because we couldn't go in, purchase a farm or purchase a piece of raw land, start building a greenhouse. We're talking that's a minimum of at the time $3.5 million, but more like about $6.5 million for for the facility. You can't start spending that money unless beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have water.
Right.
Without water, you got nothing, right? So you could get halfway through building that, all of your money is hard to your vendors. None of it's returnable at that point, and then the federal government comes in and says, "Oh, we're going to pull your water because you're cannabis." Which is funny because if we were barley making beer, we would have gotten subsidies. But is what it is. So there was a certain sense that kind of did happen to us, and that's why we kind of got our butts kicked pretty hardcore with that. Basically, had to turn every bit of effort in the company, with at least Mike and I, towards learning water law, hiring the best water attorneys that we could find in Colorado. Meeting and learning every single personality and person that's a Division II Water Resources, which is the active, they act as God for us at this point. They could literally turn us off, turn us back on,
Where does it stand now? So do you have an outdoor grow?
Yeah. So we own a greenhouse. Yep, that greenhouse we don't have an outdoor grow in that we grow directly under the sun. No, we grow in a greenhouse, so it's a controlled environment. We do use sunlight, and
because the greenhouse means the sun's coming through that glass.
Yeah,
right?
It's coming through glass. Yeah, it's coming through the glass, but it allows us to control the environment inside. So it might be a sunny day in the dead of winter, and it could be 2 degrees. 4 degrees, 5 degrees, especially with a hardcore wind chill factor, and you go into our greenhouse and it's 72. Perfect. So a 2-acre room in a big field, it's 72 degrees all the time. Pretty wild.
Such an interesting business, dude.
It is, yeah. It's a pretty wild thing when you think about what we put here. And we put it in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's in Colorado City. It's about an hour south of Colorado Springs. So, my commute to work is an hour. I never wanted it to be an hour, but it had to be because that was the closest piece of land that we found with water rights that were completely sovereign. My water right, I believe, is from 1861. So I bought a water right that was established in 1861.
And I'm sure in 1861 they thought, I wonder if pot's going to be grown on this land. Sure.
No, they never did. They never did. But it is second up the river and the first up the river. Dear friends of ours, they sold us a piece of land just south of us, and that individual was my mentor in water law. And it's funny enough, you talk about he's one of the smartest guys I've ever met. He's an agronomist by trade, but he's like a lot of farmers. Don't ever underestimate how smart these guys are out here in the countryside. To say they're all they're their own mechanics, welders, pilots. It's amazing, agronomists, water attorneys. And this guy walked us through just about everything, and we're very thankful for having a neighbor who had a niece that found some incredible relief for her seizures with cannabis. And so when he learned about a cannabis grow coming down here, he said, "I want to meet the guys." Met us, my brother and I, and said, "All right, you guys seem like you're salt of the earth guys, and started a relationship. And then when we, hit some problems with water law, I said, I know a thing or two about that. Why don't you come over to my house for, some zucchini bread and a cup of coffee?" And so we went over there, and man, does he know a lot. So we started, getting mentored from him, and he basically looked over our shoulder in every single thing. And, 2 attorneys, water law on it. I mean, I probably sunk, if I sunk 300, I probably sunk 350 grand into that problem. I mean, it was insane.
Wow.
Yeah. That you didn't expect to spend. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Dude, we have spent some time on this. I need to respect your time, but not before I ask 2 of my favorite questions that I ask every guest, even ones that aren't involved in cannabis. My expertise is in social and emotional support, which means encouragement and mentoring and leadership. When I ask you, Rich, who made you feel like you could do this? Or when you were young, maybe someone picked you up when you fell down, or who is it for you that made you feel like you're something special?
Oh, my folks. It all started there. I'm just incredibly fortunate. My parents are amazing. They've always been just so supportive. I have a 5-year-old daughter now, and if there's one wish, I just wish that I could be half the parents that my parents were to me. So it just has given me a great blueprint and what I want her to take away from this. And yeah, so I just always knew that it might be hard, but I could do anything. Mm-hmm. It might take forever, but I can learn anything. I truly feel like there's nothing that I can't do. I think that's why we met through magic, you know what I mean? And I started to see magic and just say, oh my God, what is this? And magicians never reveal their secrets. How do you learn? Oh, I'm going to do it now. Right. And then it just became addictive. Once you get into that rabbit hole, you're never out, so, right. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I've had a lot of great mentors along the way. I've had, a lot of things that stick out in my mind when you ask that question. I had one hockey coach who was just a fantastic hockey coach. He brought our team to 2 high school state championships. I remember he used to always say, winners do the things the losers don't do because they're too damn hard. And it's so true. It's just every little thing that counts,
Right. Yeah. Go hockey coach. What's his name?
His name is Trevor Pochapinsky, and he played for the Los Angeles Kings. He also himself won a Canadian national championship, and then he coached Cheyenne Mountain High School for 6 years of hockey and won 4 state championships, 2 with my brother's team, who graduated right before me, and then 2 with my team.
Have you ever told Coach Pochapinsky?
Pochapinsky. Yeah.
Pochapinsky. Have you ever told Coach Pochapinsky how much he means to you?
Oh yeah. I saw him around. You could always see that coach every time you go see a CC hockey game. He was a CC hockey alum, and so, a matter of fact, I don't think I've been to a game without seeing him there. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm sure he's proud of you.
Still a big member of the community. Yeah, for sure.
And I'm sure, even though they were a little surprised at first, your parents are very proud of you now.
Yeah, they told us as much. Brad, they were surprised at first. And then it just kind of became this thing like, those boys, my boys, Yeah,
we are going to end with the same question I ask every single person. We have Rich Kwessell. He runs Strawberry Fields. What's the full name of your company?
It's Strawberry Fields is the name of our retail stores. And then the name of our greenhouse and our production side of our company is Heartland Industries.
And what's your website? Strawberry Fields?
StrawberryFieldsCannabis.com.
Got it. Mm-hmm. All right. Rich Kwessell, cannabispreneur, expert and owner of all things cannabis. Very successful. 13 years in the business. That's since the beginning of the Colorado cannabis industry. What gives you hope?
So there's still a lot of change to be made. The way the industry is set up now, it seems like it's going to cannibalize itself the way it's set up now. However, what gives me hope is that there still is a lot of change to make. It's not federally legal across the board yet. And when that happens, there'll be yet another change to the framework, and the rules and the chessboard will change. And so whatever that happens, we have our ear to the grindstone. We're in several associations that have lobbyists, one link away from what's going on. And so, so we'll have to adapt. I think once that happens, I think we'll look at a world where banking is going to be much more legitimate for us. We'll be able to access legitimate banking loans. I also think Regulation 280E will go away. That will mean that we'll be able to claim our taxes like a normal business, no different than the way you do yours or a football manufacturer does theirs. I think, and then I also think too that overstate commerce will certainly change. I don't know how that will change yet. It's still very much up in the air whether or not that'll be a benefit or a detriment to us. But if it's a detriment, we'll change, and if it's a benefit, we'll double down. So, a lot of hope left for the industry, and I think anybody who's in it now, they fought hard to be where they're at. That's for sure. I got a lot of respect for them, especially if they're doing it right, paying their taxes, if they've been audited by the IRS, so they know for a fact if they're doing their taxes right or not. We have been a couple times, so we know. They'll be here to stay, and we'll see them. We'll see them for a long time.
Rich Kwessell, what a nice guy. I'm so glad you took the time to visit.
It's been an honor, Brad. Thank you for having me. For you, the world, my man. And so anything else I can do for you, you just let me know.
StrawberryFieldsCannabis.com. Rich, stay with me. Everybody else, be good to each other. Go visit one of Rich's stores. If you need a massive machine that rolls joints very fast, he's your guy.
Thanks, Brad.
Everybody, I'll see you next time. Rich, hold on. Thanks, everyone.